Moving on to the 30% boards. For those, there are all the paired boards besides the 3 high ones. And for the straights, there are the ace-x wheel ones and all the 4x ones. For the non-paired boards, there are the ace-x that has a deuce through 6 in them. And for the queen-x one, there are all of them besides the one that does not have a flush draw plus a 8 or 9 plus a straight draw in them. So again, we're going to be looking at some sims together. Starting off, we're going to look at some of the paired boards and starting with some of the ace-high ones. So in general, these boards are going to be quite high frequency across the board. The only ones that will sort of decrease in frequency are generally the ace-ace-king one or the ace-king-king ones. These in general, you will have to start decreasing the C bet frequency from the average frequency. So if you take a look at some more of the ones around the flop frequency, the average frequency. So in general, these are on the higher frequency side. I wouldn't range bet these boards. You can range bet a few of them. I think in general, the ones that have a 10 or a jack in them are gonna be the ones you could range bet because they tend to be closer to 90% frequency. Those you could range bet if you so choose. But for the rest of them, I would try to start developing a checking range on. For example, you can see ace 8 8, only 63% frequency. So for the ace-high ones, we are gonna be a bit less protection bet oriented than the other paired boards, but still gonna happen obviously because we're gonna be saving at quite a high frequency. You can see some of the medium on the pairs are checking at a decent portion, especially as you get to your higher ones like queens and kings. And then you will see some of your weaker on the pairs are gonna start increasing frequency quite a bit. And in general, a healthy mix of all your top pairs gonna be betting on flop. In general, gradually going down a bit when you have a weaker kicker without a backdoor flush draw. And in general, on paired boards, your traps are going to be your weaker medium trips. Those are going to be the one that's going to start mixing some checks, and then you see your stronger ones are 90% bet frequency. And then of course your boats are going to be also some of your natural traps. And also on the paired board, you're going to in general be betting at a high frequency with your best high card hands. So for example, this board, king, queen, king, jack, king 10, even king 9 are all high frequency. This is essentially a value bet on flop. And you can see your weak ones starting to check more, especially if you don't have a backdoor flush draw. So if you take a look at, say, a lower paired one, you will see the frequency increasing again. So it tends to be, in general, a shift of the lower the pair, the higher the frequency you're gonna bet, besides on the 10-10 jack-jack ones where you could range bet on. So you can see now on ace 4-4, you're gonna be increasing frequency quite a bit. You're gonna see, for example, trips, you are mainly gonna be pure betting your trips, and again, your traps are gonna be the weaker trips. So this is a function because out of position won't have as many trips on this board as on 8-8-1. So now your trips are a bit more valuable, so you're gonna be looking to almost pure bet them. And we can take a look at some other pair boards, for example, some of the king high ones. I mean, all the pair boards will be at higher frequency, but in general, the higher card paired boards are going to be higher frequency, and then the lower paired boards, you're going to start decreasing your C-bet frequency a bit. So for example, on a king-king one, because of the out of position now, will have a higher frequency of trips as well. You are going to be starting to trap them a bit more, even though it's a fairly high frequency board. You can see the common theme of some of your best high card hands are still betting at a high frequency. You can see a general mix of all hands getting in there for some bets. Besides some of your poor backdoor hands that have some showdown, like a queen 7, queen 6, will be closer to a pure check. And you can see the similar theme of your pocket pairs gradually increasing frequency the weaker you get and the more protection it does need. Just take a quick look at some turns. For example, when both the flop bottom card is low and the turn is low, you're going to be betting for protection at a high frequency with some of your weaker pairs. You can see, for example, here 3x is a high frequency bet. Again, this is because both the 4x and 3x are quite vulnerable, so you are going to be betting them at a high frequency for protection. If the bottom card would be higher and the turn card would be higher, you would not be betting them at such a high frequency because you need a bit less protection. So that's just a function I wanted to quickly show you. And in general, on turns on paired boards, we are mainly just going to be betting in the 67-58% pot region. If you're going to play a single size, you don't really have overbets at all on paired flops, so it sort of functions similar to the monotone boards where on turns we are going to be betting a bit more for protection in general. for a smaller size. Let's take a look at some other paired boards. Look at some queen paired, for example. Again, the higher card one is going to be higher frequency, but if we start working our way down to, say, a 9 paired board, actually let's start at the 10 eye board. So you can slowly see a shift down in the frequency. It's not going to be that drastic for your flop C betting frequency to start going down. This can feel a bit counterintuitive because the lower boards you're going to have a bit more vulnerable top pairs, and weaker value hands in general would benefit more from protection betting. But in general, the higher card paired boards are better for our range than other position range, and that will shift our C betting frequency. And again, you can see on the lower trips boards, we are gonna mainly be pure betting our trips, some occasional traps, but not as much when the pair is a higher one. Let's see a very low paired board, and now you can see a bigger shift in your flop C betting going down quite a bit. And you can see a much higher frequency of traps as well for your trips. Even your bottom pairs again are gonna be decreasing in the flop C bet frequency quite a bit. Again, feels a bit counterintuitive because a Deuce X needs a lot of protection on this board, but this is just a function that this board is not as good for us as some of the higher card ones, so you just have to adjust your flop C betting frequency accordingly to that. But again, in general, paired boards will operate similar to one another. The best thing you can do is just recognize both what type of board it is and then what the general frequency of that type of board will be, and then also the characteristics of that board, if that will increase the global average frequency or not, and then adjust your frequency accordingly, because obviously you can't memorize everything, every combo, every frequency, so you just have to look at the bigger picture things to try to adjust your flop C betting range accordingly. So yeah, you can see on the frequency board you have a lot of pure checks in general, and you can see even some of your better pocket pairs that generally would need a lot of protection are mixing some checks like pocket 7, pocket 8, pocket 9s. These are the type of hands I would think most people would mess up and pure bet on flop, because they see a strong enough hand C bet and it's kind of vulnerable to turn, so we would want to pure bet it. But again, since it's not as good of a paired flop for us as some of the other ones, we cannot pure bet this type of hands on this type of board. So yeah, that's some of the paired boards. And let's take a look now at some of the straight boards, starting with some of the A6 wheel ones. So in general, these type of boards will be more medium high frequency. Some of the higher ones are going to be the ones that has a larger disconnect with the middle and the bottom card and is rainbow, and ones that are a bit more connected with the flush are going to be closer to the average flop frequency. So taking a look at this board, for example, you can see again on these type of boards, when the middle or bottom card is low and we use a small sizing at a medium to high frequency, we are going to be doing a lot of protection betting. All the good second and third pairs are getting in there for a high frequency bet. And this is also so we are constructing a range, so we have some calls against river probes after turn goes check check. And then looking at more of our stronger hands, straights, pure betting, sets, pure betting. Most of our two pairs are pure betting besides top and bottom. This tends to be the two pair that will check the most if you're checking any two pairs in general on straight boards. But the other straight board that we're gonna look at later that uses larger sizing and a lower frequency flop C bet are gonna be mixing more of all the two pairs into our checking range. And you also can see that all the top pairs are getting in there at fairly high frequency, but again naturally decreasing in frequency as our kicker gets worse and worse. More the bluffing region, again this will hold true for most boards. Our flush draw is going to be betting at a higher frequency in the board, but you're still evenly mixing in all of them at some frequency, and then in general the better showdown ones are gonna check more. Our open-enders will bet at a high frequency and pure bet with a backdoor flush draw or a flush draw, and without you need to be mixing in some checkbacks, so you can have some stronger hands on turn and also some more bluffs, delays. And in general, the higher frequency flop bets are going to be straight draws and flush draws, and then you're going to be also betting a fairly high frequency with any good backdoor holding. It has both a backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. Together are going to be a high frequency bet. And your high frequency checks are going to be so that you're middling weaker showdown with poor backdoor potential as well. And in general, these are how these boards are gonna work. And then on turns, on the unpaired ace I'm gonna look at soon, you're gonna be mainly